Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BruWings and Things podcast. This is episode 3, and I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts. They are back. I know you probably missed them last week when they were off rendezvousing, having a great time at the F1 race in Texas, but I am joined by Cameron and Alex. How are you guys? How was your trip?
It was really good. It was cool.
It was a great time. Yeah, it was fun.
Now we're back. This is not going to be like, we're not going to be together. He is here visiting me and other people. So we're not going to be together all the time, unfortunately. So next week, we're not going to go back to the 3 squares because you're going to be gone. But 2 weeks from now, we'll be back to normal.
At some point, we will be normal.
Yeah. We have a little bit weird setup for right now.
We'll figure it
out. Well, I'm glad to have you guys back.
We're still young.
On this Halloween Eve. So we do have a few things that we want to get into from this week. So one main thing that, unless you live under a rock, has been talked about this entire week, we found out who John Doe is in the Blackhawks sexual assault case. It is Kyle Beach, who was a Black Ace during the time of the 2010 Stanley Cup run. We really don't want to beat this into the ground too much because I think everyone knows what happened was extremely disturbing, and we commend Kyle Beach for coming forward and giving other victims a voice. And I think that this is a huge step forward for the NHL to put a face to it. Although he didn't have to, he did it in order to make sure this never happens again, and to stand strong and really show that, to say, this is who I am, this happened to me, I want everyone to know it, and I never want this to happen to anyone else. So it's probably one of the greatest displays of bravery I've seen in the National Hockey League in quite some time. So I think we can all agree that what happened was disgusting, disturbing. I hope justice is brought. I hope Kyle Beach can find peace and in every way and hopefully he finds what he's searching for, and he can have some type of comfort going forward, knowing that he was able to come forward and pretty much everyone is on his side. So that was good to know. And it's good to see a lot of support throughout the league, whether it be current players, former players, fans, etc. So do you guys have anything brief that you would like to say about it at all?
The one thing that I would say is that Kyle Beach coming forward was, like you said, like one of the most brave things that anybody can do given the circumstances. I think he showed more courage by putting his face and name to it than the entire Blackhawks organization did in handling the situation in the first place. It's incredible that he felt as though he needed to apologize in his interview to the minor that was assaulted after the fact, because his assaulter ended up going to a high school and doing the exact same thing to a minor, and the fact that he felt that he needed to apologize to that person in saying, I wish I had come out with this sooner so that maybe I could have stopped it. The fact that he felt the need to do that, I mean, that was heartbreaking. It's incredible to me, the amount of bravery and courage that he showed in being able to come out, and I'm very thankful for him, honestly. It's a huge thing to do, and hopefully it's something that can actually instill true lasting change in the NHL and even outside the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty heartbreaking and just depressing that he felt that he needed to apologize. And he said, I wish I could have done something to stop other people from being hurt. And it really goes to show you that you never know what someone is going through, and you don't know their reasons for not coming forward. So it's always best to, believe victims and take things seriously and try to help out whenever you can, especially in hockey culture. Taylor Hall actually had a great quote after the game earlier this week against the Hurricanes. They asked him about it, and he said, hockey is really an old boys game and we need to change that. So it was really nice seeing a guy like him come out and say, things need to change and we stand behind him. And I love that he called it an old boys game, because I think he put that perfectly. And I think this is going to be a huge turning point. And it's also great that Coach Q is no longer the coach of the Florida Panthers, because like Kyle Beach said, there's no way everyone in that locker room did not know, especially if you are coaching that team. And the whole thing where he basically said winning is more important than this sexual assault case. So there's plenty of things that are bigger than hockey and plenty of things that are bigger than winning a Stanley Cup, no matter what. So that just goes to show you the kind of toxic environment that the 2010 Blackhawks team was dealing with. But like I said, we won't get too much into this because we can all agree it's just a terrible situation. But I really wanted to focus on what Jonathon Toews said, because I think his statement was just atrocious as the captain of the Blackhawks. And you hear about Jack Eichel, his captaincy gets stripped. To me, Toews doesn't sound like much of a captain here. I don't want to say strip his captaincy, but this is your leader making this type of statement. And I've always looked up to Toews before this. I mean, who really hates Jonathon Toews unless you're a fan of a rival team? He seems like a good, soft-spoken guy, Captain Serious. We kind of grew up watching him play. So it really, they say never meet your idols. And then you realize some people think this way. So I do just want to read his statement, because if you're listening, I'm sure you know the Kyle Beach situation, but maybe not everyone heard the statement that Toews put out. So this is exactly verbatim. To me, Stan and Al, make any argument you want. They're not directly complicit in the activities that happened. It's not up to me to comment on whether they'd like to deal with it differently or not. I just know them as people, and I've had a relationship and friendship with them for a long time as being part of the Blackhawks family. People like Al and Stan have made coming to the Blackhawks for players around the league who come here to play on this team one of the special places to play hockey. To me, I have a ton of respect for them as people. How the situation went down, what the timeline was, what they knew, I can't really comment on that. It's obviously a tough day. Regardless of mistakes that may have been made, for someone like Stan, who has done so much for the Blackhawks, and Al as well, to lose everything they care about and their livelihoods as well, I don't understand how that makes it go away, to just delete them from existence and say, that's it, we'll never hear from them again. I have a lot of respect for them as people. They're good people. When it comes down to how they feel looking back on the situation, that's not up to me to comment on. Honestly, that is probably the worst thing your captain could have said in light of this situation. And he must have said they're good people about 3 different times. And what he was saying without really saying it was he doesn't believe they should lose their jobs because they're good people and they've done a lot. While that may be true, and you didn't go through this, how would you feel as Kyle Beach hearing the captain speak about your situation this way, especially when he was basically your teammate at the time? I know Kyle Beach was the Black Ace, but that's your captain, that's your leader. I don't think anyone would feel comfortable going to Jonathon Toews with any concerns in the locker room if this is how he's going to address things, address a very serious, very disturbing situation involving his hockey club. So I just want to know what both of you think about what he said, or what you think he could have said differently. Honestly, this is the exact opposite of what should have been said. So Cam, what do you think about this?
Well, it's kind of like, let me protect my dad, or like, I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me, like kind of like that, like instead of actually like standing up for what's right and like saying, even, I mean, he could feel this way, like totally, which is like terrible, but like to me, it sounds just like, I'm not going to jeopardize my job because I'm getting paid and I don't want to be yelled at and have an uncomfortable meeting with my boss or something like that. Or like, like that's what it seems like to me. That's the only logical explanation I could even think of. Like, even if you do believe that these people are good people, like the press
don't say that.
don't say that.
This is not the time or place.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Like, don't go out and say this ridiculous statement to everyone about this situation. And like, it just, I don't know. It really doesn't make sense. Like, that's the only way it can make sense. You're just not going to bite the hand that feeds you, and you're going to show full support for your boss because he writes your paycheck.
How about you, Alex? What would you have either done differently, or what do you think Toews was thinking? Like, what is going on inside his head?
You know, it's a lot like you said. He said they're great people like 3 or 4 different times. I mean, he lawyered it. Like he used a bunch of words to say a whole bunch of nothing, essentially, except what Cam said. Like, you know, thanks for signing my $10.5 million a year. He's not gonna say anything against them, it's bullshit. Like, take some kind of measured approach to at least address the issue that happens. Like, oh, yeah, Stan Bowman did such a good job for the team. Well, he didn't do a good job for Kyle. And beyond even the actual assault itself and the handling of it, if we want to talk about how he handled Kyle Beach's career, he essentially tanked it. Like, how often does Kyle Beach was picked like 14th or 15th or something like that the year that he was drafted. How often does a player in that range hardly ever see the NHL? That never happens. There's a specific reason, and it was even beyond the mismanagement of the assault. This person's livelihood was ruined because of the mismanagement of all of this, and he's going to be traumatized forever because of this. And I hope that he finds the peace that he needs. But somebody in position of power like Toews, I don't care if he was, 19, 20 when he was the captain when this all went down, whatever the excuse is. Maybe don't be the fucking captain then if you can't handle this kind of stuff. Like, it's very simple. It is the most simple thing you can do to say, yes, these people did a bad thing. I support the victim. That's it. That's all he would have had to say, and he would have gotten the green light, a pass from everybody in the league. But he said literally the worst things that you can say in this situation. It's ridiculous. Like, use your brain. Use 2 ounces of your brain, and you would have had a better statement.
And he could have been, like, it wouldn't have been great, but he could have been just like, no comment, like, I'm not going to get into this. Or he could have been like, let's stay bipartisan with it. But he just chose to go the exact wrong path, which sucks.
Yeah.
Because like you said before, Kaylee, like, we grew up like watching him and like thinking he was awesome, and like I loved, like, especially in that time, like I loved rooting for the Blackhawks. Like, they were awesome. But now it's just like, what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it really puts a stain on the Blackhawks dynasty, because that they had such a great story, and I think a lot of people were pulling for them in the 2010 final. Definitely not 2013, because that was against the Bruins. But I know myself, I loved that 2010 Blackhawks team. They were so much fun to watch, so much talent. I mean, nobody will ever forget Patrick Kane's overtime goal to win it. Nobody saw it go in. That's like such a legendary moment in NHL history. And now that's so tainted, and nobody even wants them to have that championship anymore. And I think 1,000% they need to take Brad Aldrich's name off the Stanley Cup, because he does not deserve that littlest bit of recognition, and that is engraved there forever. And the players in the future, I would not want to lift that cup if I knew that man's name was on there. So he just needs to be wiped from everything that has to do with them. And hopefully I know he's already a registered sex offender, but hopefully this whole case does, hopefully justice is served, and I hope he never is able to hurt anyone again. But yeah. Also, just to kind of go along with this, we had a 23-year-old Alex DeBrincat on the Blackhawks. He made a better statement than his captain, Jonathon Toews. So he was asked about it. And what DeBrincat said to the press was, quote, "Hearing the story is pretty disturbing. That's never something you want to hear goes on. We cannot move on from it, but learn from it and come together as a team and make sure that doesn't happen again. and they asked him about Stan Bowman resigning. And he said, it's probably a change that needed to happen. It's probably a good thing we parted ways. So here you have a 23-year-old showing more courage, more self-awareness, and more compassion than Jonathon Toews, however old he is. Honestly, it doesn't matter how old you are. You know right from wrong. You, especially as the captain. So you have DeBrincat, taking the reins on this and saying, this is messed up, good riddance to Bowman, and that's that. So I would not want to be a part of the hockey club. And if I was on the Blackhawks, I would have said the same thing, because that organization is so tainted now. And I truly feel for the fans, because, the fans have nothing to do with this. If this was my team, I would be devastated. I wouldn't want to put money into this organization. And so many of their fans have already put so much money and time into this organization. So I actually believe their attendance numbers have dropped, not only due to their terrible start, but also due to the sexual assault case.
Yeah.
So who knows how long the Blackhawks will take to recover from this, but we can definitely move on. We just kind of wanted to shed some light on it, make sure everyone was aware, some statements that were made, and that we stand behind Kyle Beach 1,000%, and anyone that has ever dealt with this or had to go through something as terrible as this. So just remember to always talk to someone if you can. And if someone comes to you with something like this, be there for them. Always believe the victims. So, and if you've ever put your hands on someone without their consent, then screw you, because that is just the lowest of the low. So moving on to some other weekly NHL happenings, the Carolina Hurricanes are currently the only undefeated team left in the league. They are 8-0. They beat the Coyotes today 2-1, which is kind of not a surprise. And their next game is Wednesday against the Blackhawks. So they might be going 9-0. But then Saturday, November 6th, they're taking on the Panthers. So that is going to be a really good game, I think, so far. What do you guys think about the Hurricanes so far? Do you think that they're doing so well because their schedule's been easy, or do you think they're genuinely a team to watch out for? Alex, what do you think about the Hurricanes' performance so far?
I think they're a pretty solid team. Looking at some of their underlying numbers, being who I am, they're actually performing really, really well. The Svechnikov line is doing very well. He himself is scoring at a pretty good clip. He's almost like a goal per game right now, I think. I don't know if he scored today, but I think he had 7 goals coming into today. First of all, I hope that Shane Wright likes dry heat, because he's going to end up in Arizona. But I really do think that their goaltending has also been a saving grace for them. They've been rearranged on the back end a little bit, so their defense may not be as good as it has been in the past, but it's still really, really solid, and they're getting the support that they need for their goaltending to perform at a pretty high level, considering they got rid of all the goaltenders that they had coming into this season, and they basically just kind of like picked up the scraps almost. They're doing really well. I'm surprised, but I think they're going to continue to be this good.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. That the Hurricanes have a solid squad when Tony DeAngelo is scoring goals. Yeah. I was at the Bruins Hurricanes game, unfortunately, on Thursday night, and DeAngelo scored. So that was a kind of a punch in the chest. But just kind of goes to show you, all jokes aside, that everyone on that team is performing. And, Freddie Anderson was in goal on Thursday as well, and he shut out my Bruins. So it was extremely frustrating game to be at. But the Hurricanes, they might hit a cool spot. They got to cool down at some point, but I think they are a genuine contender going into the playoffs this year. Cam, what do you think? Would you be afraid? If the Bruins played the Hurricanes, do you think they're legitimately can go past the first or second round?
Well, once a hurricane hits landfall, it kind of loses some steam.
Jesus Christ.
Boo.
They've been storming the NHL so far, but
a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna clear up in the future. And yeah, I just wanted to say
that's your analysis.
just puns.
Please send help.
No, I mean, I really do think that they're a pretty gritty like team, and like when I was watching the Bruins game, what like every single time it was like you were watching like NHL like 22 or whatever. Like the second a player got a puck, there was like just two guys that immediately went like whoom, and just like magnets attracted to that player, and like every single like they weren't playing like soft zone and like allowing space. They were just attacking you every single like second you had the puck, and it was ridiculous, and it was really annoying. So I do think that they're going to be a good team. As for a playoff team, I don't know. I think they do have a lot to prove, but I think they're 100% making the playoffs. Like I don't think they're going to lose that much steam, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, they have playoff experience too, so maybe if they play a team under the cap, they might actually be able to beat them.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the rest of the division, just like everything else, the way things have been going in the league. And, you know, it's one of the toughest divisions they are in the Metro, and the Caps are doing well so far. And, you know, yeah, you got some competition there. So just as I've been saying with everything else, it's going to come down to how everyone else performs. But yeah, the Hurricanes are definitely scary. And then the other undefeated team that just got their streak broken was the Florida Panthers. So the Florida Panthers are definitely legit, but they did just lose their first game of the season last night to the Bruins in a shootout. So that felt really good as a Bruins fan. But I think that the Panthers are going to be in the Cup final, and I will say it every episode if I have to. But I firmly believe that this is the time, and it's going to be really interesting to see with the coaching change. Because, you know, Coach Q, I mean, it must be frustrating for him, but rightfully so. He deserves to be escorted out. But it must be frustrating to finally have built up the dream team that South Florida wants, and now he's gone. So it's going to be interesting because there's such a wagon, and now the locker room, you know, the locker room atmosphere might change. I don't know the relationship that these players had with Coach Q. I'm not in the locker room, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the Panthers do without Coach Q, because he has coached them into a lot of success. I mean, granted, it's not just him. They've acquired a lot of players and got a lot of pieces that they need, and their goaltending's solid, and they have 4 rolling lines, great defense. I mean, they're a threat. So I think they're going to be in the Cup final. But Alex, what do you think about the Panthers from what you've seen so far, and how they're going to progress and continue throughout the season?
I love the Panthers. I hate that they're in our division because we have to play them a lot, which means that they're a good team. I think the Red Wings gave them hell the other night, all things considered, especially considering where the Red Wings are at within their rebuild and stuff like that. But, man, they are a force. The Panthers are good up and down the lineup. They've got 2 really solid goaltenders. Bobrovsky, I was just looking it up. Bobrovsky is currently, depending on the model you look at, he's at the top of the league in terms of goals saved above expected. So he's
getting their
playing,
$10 million worth.
Yeah, he's actually starting to perform towards his contract, which is good. We knew he could. I mean, he's won the Vezina, twice? Like, in Columbus, of all places. So he's a good player. And if he continues to play like this, Spencer Knight's not going to see a lot of ice time, which that's a good problem to have if you're the Panthers. I think that they're going to continue this pace. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up in the Cup finals. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. They're hot.
Yeah, absolutely. Cam, do you think they could win it all, or do you think it's just not meant to be in South Florida? Like, do you genuinely see the Panthers lifting the Cup this year?
I think they're definitely a wagon, and I think they're going to make a deep run. As for a Cup, that's tough because, like Carolina, they can't get that far, and like they don't have deep playoff runs under their belt. So it'll be interesting to see how they come together in the playoffs like that. And the fact that they're really good. They're a great team. Like, I'm not taking anything away from them, but it'll be very interesting, especially with like the West. Like, the Avalanche are good too. They're very good, and they've been hunting a cup for a while. So I don't know. Maybe Eastern Conference Finals. I'll give them that. I'll give them a pass to the Eastern Conference Finals.
All right. Yeah, I think that's realistic. I can see that. But yeah, the Panthers, Panthers and the Hurricanes. I mean, if you think of those teams a few years ago, you probably would have never guessed that the Panthers and Hurricanes would be such a threat. So it's interesting to see, the teams that have been on top are now declining, like the Blackhawks. And then you have the somewhat, quote, irrelevant teams that used to be are now surging. So every fan and every fan base will get their time eventually. So that's comforting, right, Alex?
Yes, it is. It's fine. We had 25 years of success. I'm okay with 7 or 8 years of mediocrity.
Hey, Raymond,
The Wings are nasty, though, right?
Sorry, but if you put money on Lucas Raymond and or Moritz Seider to win the Calder, you're looking pretty good because they're 1-2 right now in rookie scoring. What the hell is going on?
The Wings are nasty.
The Wings are nasty.
They're kind of a wagon.
Yeah.
So in other news this week, Morgan Rielly, Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman, signed an 8-year, $60 million contract extension. And what's interesting about this is this seems to be way less than what defensemen are getting nowadays in the NHL. But what's even more interesting is that this leaves the Leafs with less than $6 million in cap space currently. So I don't know how they are going to bring back this team in the future. Alex, I think you were mentioning the guys that need to be re-signed. Can you tell us who that is? And do you think it's possible that they can re-sign the guys they need to, especially after this contract?
Yeah, so I was just looking at it because I was curious how many forwards they were going to have on the roster going into next year because they've only got $6.2 million on the books available. And as far as UFAs, Jason Spezza is gone. I don't think he'll come back. They'll throw another UFA in there. I mean, maybe if they like him, he'll come back. But guys like Pierre Engvall, Andre Kasha, Timothy Liljegren is a young defenseman that they like coming up into the system. Rasmus Sandin has to sign his RFA extension, and he's been pretty good for him. Some of these guys are going to be a little expensive. And then in net, they've only got Mrazek signed through next year, so Jack Campbell's got to come back. They really like him, obviously. He's played very well for him. Either way, they've got $6 million to sign at least 2 more defensemen, 3 forwards, and a goalie. Where does this leave us? They're going to have to ship somebody out. I don't
think anyone wants to be in Toronto that bad to
Yeah.
take that much of a pay cut.
Like in a normal year on a normal team, the Morgan Rielly contract is actually incredible. Like 8 years, $7.5 million. That's a really good contract. For Morgan Rielly and the minutes that he pulls and how important he is to the team. That's a good contract. But man, they're in a mess. I'm just going to be very interested to see how they handle it.
It's really interesting too. When Rielly's extension kicks in, Toronto will be committing nearly $50 million per season to its core of Rielly, Austin Matthews, which is $11.64 million, John Tavares, $11 million, Mitch Marner, $10.093 million, and William Nylander, $6.96 million. So you are putting $50 million into this core who has never got you past the first round. And that's not me making a joke. That's just maybe putting all your money into just guys you think are good is not the solution. And maybe some more chemistry and depth is needed because, like you said, I think the Rielly signing was one of the smartest signings they've had in quite a while. Like you said, for the minutes and the way he performs at that price, obviously we know the standard for defensemen is quite high these days. Yeah. So for Rielly to stay in Toronto at such a great contract and a reasonable extension, that's very impressive, especially with what all these other guys are making. And for what, to underperform and not get the team where they want to be. Yeah. So, Cam, do you think this signing can bring Toronto past the second round? Do you think changes need to be made? What do you think about their core and what they need to do?
I honestly don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, they're putting, like I said, or like you said, like what, $50 million into what, 5 people, 5 people, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I know, BruWings, but 3 people, top line, $18 million. Like, that's what it should be. A great player. I understand, like, the Connor McDavid what? He has 12 million or something ridiculous.
Yeah, he's got like the league maximum, and
Like,
he should be
he's
getting
the
paid
great,
more. Like
the greatest hockey player in the past like 10 years. So like maybe even more than that.
yeah.
So he deserves that. But the players that they're giving $11 million contracts, like, and think about what I just said. Connor McDavid, the best player in the past 20 years in the NHL, and then like all the Leafs core, like Matthews. Of course, Matthews, I would say he deserves it.
Yeah, let's look at Marner's contract.
Marner,
if we're
Tavares.
gonna pick on somebody who maybe isn't playing to the value of their contract, Mitch Marner might be the one. So I think, honestly, it'll be interesting to see who among them gets shipped off. Because they're
So you
going to have
think
to move
Marner is
somebody.
gone?
I think he could be. I think he could be the odd man out in this situation because Nylander's contract is solid enough that he can continue playing to that value of it. But I don't know. We'll have to see.
All right. So the last thing we want to cover today is our special segments that we like to go through at the end of every show. I do hockey history, Cameron does betting, and Alex does analytics. So today is October 31st. Happy Halloween. Candy corn is trash.
Oh,
Cameron,
don't
just
say
you wait.
anything.
Just you wait.
Candy corn's very bad. Thank you.
Candy corn, yeah. How do you eat it? You put it in the trash. So yes, today, Halloween, October 31st, on this date in NHL history, 1981, Wayne Gretzky becomes the first player in NHL history to have 7 hat tricks before his 21st birthday.
Jeez.
When he scores 4 goals and has an assist and an 11-4 victory against the Quebec Nordiques at Northlands Coliseum. Gretzky scores early in the second period to give the Oilers a 3-0 lead, then finishes his big night with 3 more goals and the assist in the third period against Michel Placé. It gives him 13 goals in Edmonton's first 13 games. And exactly 8 years later, Gretzky got his 46th NHL hat trick and has 3 assists for a 6-point night in the Los Angeles Kings 8-4 win against the Pittsburgh Penguins at the Civic Arena. Pittsburgh's Mario Lemieux has 2 assists to begin a 46 game point scoring streak. It's the second longest in NHL history, 5 games short of Gretzky's record. So if you want to just appreciate what an animal Gretzky is, I think that's absolutely insane. He wasn't even 21 before he had 7 hat tricks. And I know the game has changed a lot, but he always comes up in these history segments because he really is the great one in Mr. Hockey. So that was this date in NHL history, October 31st, 1981. Super interesting to hear. So Cameron, you want to give us some betting?
Well, speaking of the Oilers, they are actually playing the Seattle Kraken tomorrow, or today, or yesterday, whenever you're listening to this. But on November 1st, they are playing the Kraken, and this is going to be a very interesting game. The Oilers and the Kraken are teams that love to shoot. Oilers are obviously a really high-scoring team. Kraken like to give up goals. And the Seattle
I don't think
Kraken,
they like to.
Yeah. One sec.
There's people
There's
literally
people
fucking
screaming bloody murder outside my
screaming
window.
outside. I think somebody's getting stabbed or something.
They're having a party? Oh, and now there's a party going on upstairs.
Jesus
Okay. I'm going to restart. Speaking of the Edmonton Oilers, the Seattle Kraken are playing them Monday, November 1st. And this is definitely going to be an interesting game because, you know, the Oilers are a high-scoring team. They're playing a Kraken, which have given up a lot of goals recently. And they're favored by minus 196 money line. And honestly, that is a really good bet for taking the Oilers. 100% would go for the Oilers money line, minus 196 on that. I would go so far to even bet on the puck line, which is minus 1.5. Because, I mean, Connor McDavid's probably going to have like at least 4 assists. Maybe the Kraken squeaks some through, but the goalies for the Oilers have been okay. The Oilers have been a kind of the over though is 6.5. I would stay away from that. I mean, the Oilers could win like 8-1, Like like the Philly basically beat them like 6-1 or something like that. But 7 goals is a little much. But I'm not gonna touch the under over on this. But I would hammer Oilers minus 196, or if you want a little better payout, Oilers minus 1.5 tomorrow. That is my advice for you guys. But it's not advice. It's just me saying something, so don't sue me. That's it.
Alex, do you want to give us your analytics for the week?
Yeah, actually, Cam made a point of saying that the Oilers' goaltending has been pretty good. He's right. Mikko Koskinen is actually in the top 10 right now for goaltenders as far as goals saved above expected. He's doing really well, and part of that is the defense is actually playing a lot better than I think we would have expected coming into the season, with guys like Cece and Keith being added to the back end, and guys like Ethan Bear being shipped off. They're getting some pretty good support on the back end and in net. So yeah, everything that Cam said as far as the analysis of the team was pretty on point.
And Koskinen he's expected to play tomorrow, by the way. So
there you go. In other goalie news, the two of the bottom goaltenders in terms of goals saved above expected, Marc-Andre Fleury and Kevin Lankinen. So Chicago fans, how are we feeling? This is not great look in net right now.
Or anywhere else.
Among other things. But they are struggling right now in net pretty hard. And seeing Marc-Andre Fleury go from winning the Vezina and being outright one of the best goalies, even underlying numbers-wise last year, having a slump this year, you hate to see it. I mean, he's a great guy. He's like the one dude that I think is universally loved across the league. And seeing him struggle this hard right now is, it sucks. The only person in the league who's actually worse than him in terms of goals saved above expected is Carter Hutton in Arizona. So, that's exactly what you would expect it to be. You want to know a fun stat, though? Guess who's leading the league in expected goals for percentage at 5v5, team-wise?
Bruins.
Yeah, it is actually the Bruins.
As a team that was all about the power play and all about the penalty kill.
Yeah.
Like the past 3 or 4 years, we could only score on the power play, essentially. That being, above, what is it, goals above expected?
Yeah, it's expected goals for percentage.
Okay,
so it's like in terms of like share versus the teams that you're playing against. So it is reliant on the other teams that you're playing against.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys have played some tough teams.
Yeah, and
so,
I also just think it's because our power play sucks. Like we.
Well, this is just 5v5, so
yeah,
it's one of those that it's completely independent of special teams. But I mean, even still, you're over 58%. So that means that almost 60% of the time, the Bruins are on the ice, they're expected to score more goals than the other
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah,
it's basically the Bruins model right now. Except if it's being above the Red Wings in the standings. Chicago, Vegas, and Columbus are kind of bringing up the rear in that category. Did we expect Vegas to be this bad coming into the season? I mean, we were talking about it amongst ourselves. Like, we all expected Vegas to be more or less at the top of that division. That
was like an easy pick.
In the division, they're doing fine, but they're not playing great. They're playing some pretty rough hockey.
It's mainly due to all their injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no Pacioretty, Martinez, Patrick, or Janmark. So definitely a rough start, but I think the injuries are contributing a lot. And I think although they're starting cold, they're going to heat up a lot. I think they're just they're gonna find their stride mid to halfway through. So once everyone's healthy and they kind of can get back in their groove, I think they're still definitely in the running. But I still did not expect, 1, the injuries to happen, and 2, for them to have this cold of a start. So
right. The other team to look out for, I think, going forward, would be Buffalo. Obviously, they've been playing far above anybody's expectations to this point, I think. But it's now officially November. So the November collapse could happen at any minute.
Get ready.
It's upon us. So they're going to be one to keep an eye on, because it'll be interesting to see how they play through the end of this calendar year into next year. If they can keep it up, do we see the Buffalo Sabres in a playoff spot? I don't know. Their underlying numbers are really good, so there's a possibility there, which is scary to think about.
And it's also good to note that trade talks are heating up on the Jack Eichel front again. I just wanted to add that little tidbit. Apparently, he is likely going to Vegas, but nothing is set in stone. So that will help their cold start and their injury issue a lot. So they do not have a first line center. They don't have a number one center. So he will be the missing piece to that team, I believe, to take them all the way. So I truly think Jack Eichel will be a Vegas Golden Knight.
And you know what I believe? That candy corn is an incredible candy that everyone should enjoy. No. And I love it, and it tastes good. And I have the autumn mix right here.
That's the worst mix.
No, it's good. The pumpkins are good. I will say that the one with the brown tips are not as good as the one with the yellow tips, but candy corn is a good candy, and anyone who disagrees is insane. They should be required by law to be on the table, on the dining room table of every home throughout the fall. Thank you.
What is this, an ad?
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Brox, if you want to sponsor this podcast, hit me up.
I don't like
Well, you know those posts that are like, children, like, parents check your children's Halloween candy. Like, there was a knife in my child's bag. Like, no, like, my version is they put candy corn in my child's bag.
No,
like,
it's so good.
Like,
it's little sugar.
crime.
How could you not like it? It's just delicious sugar.
Whatever they put in it. It's like chalky, and like the way the aftertaste, and it's like gets stuck in your teeth, but it's not like a good stuck, like a chewy Starburst or a Skittle. It's like just so has good. That weird flavor. Like, I don't even know what they. So anyways, after that monstrosity, that is all we have for you this week on episode 3 of the BruWings and Things podcast. Cameron and Alex, thank you guys so much. It's always great being a host alongside you guys, and we will see you guys next week for episode 4 to find out what's brewing in the NHL.
Yep. See ya. And candy corn is amazing. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.